Mm. So it means I'm have a relationship with Malaysia more than 40 years, but this is very good opportunity in future. And
Hmm.
it means they are not fully developed country, but they have lots of opportunity in future. And they have surrounding country, neighbor, neighboring countries that they are developing countries, so they can use them. Like India, Vietnam, they can use them, right?
Right.
So
Yeah, if they keep their act together, if they make sure that they are stable, they have good education, good infrastructure, good inroads. They have a good big advantage that everybody speaks English. Um, so yeah, Malaysia is quite well positioned.
yeah, that's right. So for Japanese company, very good to communicate with the Malaysian people.
Right.
So they were going to make investment to Malaysia, and from
Right.
Malaysia, instead of Singapore, Malaysia can manage Indonesia, Vietnam, and Bangladesh and India. This is, I think,
Right.
good positioning.
But we need to be careful that actually and realize that also in Malaysia that for they are winning at the moment. Globalization is really benefiting countries like Malaysia, creates opportunities for countries like Malaysia, but there are also losers in the rest of the world. So in the developed world especially, because with the rising level of Malaysia and with their wages still being relatively low compared to Europe and the United States, they're competitive, but ultimately um, their fate, the long-term fate, is that they will end up going in the same direction as Europe and the United States, and they will also be confronted with the fact that ultimately their wage levels will not be sustainable, and other countries will take over their position.
Oh yeah, of course, Malaysia is not a country of cheap labor. And this is we need to consider what is Malaysian advantage. We must be more carefully consider, not like
No, but it's
Vietnam.
not. It's not only not cheap labor, but actually, basically, they're still relatively cheap compared to Europe, compared to the United States. And relatively because their wage levels is maybe one third of the American wage level, but their education and their infrastructure and their taxes and their tax situation is maybe much closer to the United States. Therefore, the entire package in Malaysia is attractive, but with rising wages, they actually need to make sure that everything else is also increasing. Otherwise, they will lose their competitive position. So it's not only wage that we need to consider; they also need to heavily invest in education and infrastructure and all these other things that are important for global business.
This is right. So this means Malaysia must very much emphasize on education. This is
Yep,
very important. At this
very.
standpoint, as a global level, also reconsider for education is another aspect we need to focus on.
Yeah,
Not too late. Okay, we need to consider next 10 years, right?
right. Yeah, especially working the collaboration between technology and education is very important. Um, Technology becomes very more and more potent to drive production. So people who are capable of working closely with AI, drive AI to do what is needed to make our production to become leading in production is super important. Um,
Yeah,
so
I agree with you. I think it's IT revolution will come in. It's, one example is 5G and AI. deep thinking, and this is, I think, kind of new revolution will come in next 5 years.
Right.
And one example that I recently focus on for Japanese people, English and IT. I adding on IT because developing, developing resources is tremendously scarce next 5 years. Almost in Japan, we cannot do anything at all. So we need to cooperate with Malaysia. This is one solution. And Malaysia is also considered for the cooperation with India and Bangladesh and Vietnam to doing development for IT business. They can do that.
So what you're saying is that Malaysia could be a hub to
Yeah,
get
yeah,
into.
yeah.
But why wouldn't you go directly into India? Why would you go via Malaysia?
Okay, go direct to India is depending on the company by company. Indian culture is very different from Japanese. Japanese had better one cushion to Malaysia. It's much more smooth to communicate with them. Many Indian in Japan, okay, Indian is very different culture to communicate with those people. I know that I just had Indian club for 10 years, so I had a lot of friends with Indian people, but this is a big gap with Japanese and Indian.
So what? So
They favor for us, but not easy to doing business with them directly. I think I had better working with Malaysian people first and jumping to India. It's much more convenient. Of course, I can directly doing something with them. And Indian people recently, like Pune, the city is focused on Japanese IT business, so they study. A lot of people study Japanese language, but culturally, big difference. If you have a see in the movie, is we cannot get it smoothly, right? It is different. So I think like if you're going to doing business in Africa, you try to doing Africa from Japan directly, very difficult. So most important thing is how to building mutual trust relationship. How to building trust relationship. Malaysian people very easy to building trust relationship each other by Japanese because I visited Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore more than 100, more than 50, 60, 70 times in the past. So Malaysian people are more easiest people to communicate, get trust relationship. So also many Japanese try to live in Malaysia, like Johor Bahru, for their remaining life in elderly people. It's stable and also trustful, right? But Japanese people, they don't spend the remaining, or elder people never live in India, right? Never live in Sri Lanka. So this is because of not easy to communicate with them. So this is, I think, Japanese people need to consider. Also, of course, my target for Japanese society, we're going to ask them to study English and including multicultures and including global, cultural issues, but also IT. This is Japanese two issues, English and IT. But at this aspect, I think Malaysia is very good target to Japanese. We're going to cooperate with them. Of course, Vietnam, India, with the other candidates, but different aspect. I prefer recommend Malaysia.